American beaches are among the most dangerous in the world.
The back of my hand right here was slapping off.
I was terrified. It could have easily taken my foot off.
The shark came up and grabbed onto my legs. It was a blindsided attack.
I remember screaming, "It's got me, it's got me."
I thought, I'm pretty likely to die.
These are the most dangerous shark states in America. In 2014, the United States had more shark attacks than the rest of the world combined. The Atlantic, Pacific, and Caribbean Oceans all create the perfect habitat for almost every species of shark on the planet, including 3 of the most deadly: bull, tiger, and the great white. Local fishermen call this stretch of U.S. coastline a vortex of sharks. With 25 attacks in the last decade, North Carolina is the 5th most dangerous shark state in the U.S. North Carolina is no stranger to sharks, including spinners, sandbars, blacktips, sand tigers, and many others. Some are more likely to attack humans than others. Donnie Griggs was headed for a day of fishing on Cape Lookout National Seashore when something unusual caught his attention.
We saw a whole bunch of birds and drove up to where the birds were and just saw all these sharks in the water. And so we got out and I started videotaping it, and the more we watched it, the more amazing it was. They're just feeding, man.
With his cell phone, Donnie captures this footage of something rarely seen: a shark feeding frenzy.
I mean, it felt like there was at least 100 sharks in the water. I've never seen anything like this in my whole life.
It turns out the sharks Donnie was filming were spinner sharks, a fast-swimming, migratory species responsible for 16 attacks on humans over just a 7-year period.
Those sharks are actively feeding. They are keyed in on attacking something that's kind of small. You don't want them mistaking your foot for one of their fish that they're actually there after.
And we just all stood around, blown away that we had a chance to watch that happen.
Spinner sharks move closer to shore during the spring and summer months. They hunt ferociously, targeting schools of fish, often spinning and leaping out of the water in pursuit of prey. Finely serrated teeth are designed for grasping, not cutting. This may explain why most encounters with humans result in puncture wounds and are rarely fatal.
Where a surfer might think an area is sharky just because they're seeing more sharks in that area, what I'm looking at is what brings the sharks into that area, especially large active species like our local spinner sharks.
Spinner sharks are often seen on Wrightsville Beach, a popular spot for surfers.
I remember that day specifically because I heard a friend say that they had seen several sharks out that day, but I remember thinking, I'm gonna catch a good last wave.
Alone, his feet hanging in the water like bait, Patrick suddenly feels a sharp pain.
It was almost a startle, something just grabbed my foot, but I guess it had let its grip on me go just enough for me to get my foot out, and I didn't stick around for it to come back.
Once it bit his foot, realized it didn't taste like a fish, probably a little bony, realized it was connected to something that was probably much larger than the shark itself. The shark let go and swam off.
At this point, the damage to Patrick's leg had already been done. Carson Jewell entered the water near Masonboro Island, just a few miles from Patrick's attack.
At sunrise, we were on Masonboro Island, which is like a preserved island. There aren't any houses, there aren't any people. I body surfed in my very first wave of body surfing, and I was lying down, my hands were out in front of me.
Both Carson and Patrick were surfing during the summer in murky water and during prime feeding time for sharks.
At the very end of the wave, in probably 2.5 feet of water, I felt something hit my hand and wrap it up, and was kind of wrestling me a little bit.
The shark made that decision that I'm hungry, this thing is pretty close to me, close enough that it probably can't get away if I launch myself at it right now. and then it went ahead and turned on the attack switch.
I didn't pull my hand out, I just stood up, and I didn't know what the damage would be. And then when I came up, my artery was punctured, and the back of my hand right here was flapping off, basically.
Carson and his friends were on an isolated island and miles from help.
My buddy from Asheville put a huge beach towel on it, wrapped around and put a lot of pressure on it, kept the tourniquet on it. We had to walk 10 minutes maybe to get to the boat, something like that. I also had to stop 2 times from being faint.
Luckily for Carson, he makes it to the hospital, but with little time to spare.
I imagine that I lost about as much blood as you can lose before you need blood put back in you. If I had been there with nothing and no one, I probably would have died.
One of the best things you can do is kind of learn to read the water where you're about to go in. Swim in broad daylight, get into a group, try to stick to clear water, and try not to swim near any actively feeding fish.
In 50 years, only one shark-related death has been reported along North Carolina's coast.
You're almost 100% chance of going home without getting bitten by a shark.
Scuba divers from around the world come to Morehead City, the graveyard of the Atlantic, lured by its world-class wrecks. And so are large schools of sand tiger sharks, often within arm's reach.
We just dive, and the sharks are there, and we're there. And there's no need for any chain mesh suits, no shark protection devices. We don't use any of that.
What's actually really shocking is even though we're in the top 5 for attacks in the United States, how rare attacks are compared to the number of people using our water and the number of sharks using our water.
California. Unlike the small bites of the East Coast, these shores are rich with a shark that is so big, so massive, that any encounter could prove deadly. There have been 31 attacks in the last 10 years in California, with many of those taking place near what scientists call the Red Triangle, which is not only a premier feeding ground, but also the world's leading site for great white shark attacks. Eric Larson was on his board near San Francisco's Davenport Landing.
I was out here to surf, got up very early in the morning. We were out there, it was pretty beautiful. It was a very calm, sunny day.
In the early hours of the morning, a great white begins to hunt. University of California professor Dr. Peter Klimley has studied white shark behavior since the early 1970s.
A white shark in California are cryptic, and they move close to the bottom, and they see something at the surface moving, and they strike it.
The great white targets Eric and streaks towards the surface.
I could feel the water rising under me. It's a very unusual sensation.
They're almost like a bus coming underneath you, this huge thing.
And I thought, man, something really big is coming up right underneath me.
Shaped like a torpedo and swimming at speeds of up to 15 miles per hour, the great white shark has a unique ability unlike any other shark to breach the surface of the water.
A great white shark just clamped me. The shark had the whole leg in its mouth.
The massive beast violently pulls the stunned surfer into the cold, turbulent water. Eric has only precious seconds to act.
The only thing I could think of to do was to try and pry it loose. And because I had my hands in its mouth, it managed to clamp down on both arms. And I managed to rip the right arm loose, and I thought, okay, I'll hit it a few times.
The white sharks, they think it's a seal or a sea lion, and they carry it down, and they're moving it in their mouth, and they're trying to decide whether it is a seal or a sea lion, something worth eating, and if it's not, they release it.
The shark said, oh man, I'm bugging out, and it had my leash, and so I got pulled underwater so violently, you just can't believe how violently. And finally the leash broke, and I could see my board right above me. I thought, okay, great, I'll just swim up there, I'll get on it, and I'll make it to shore.
The bite has left Eric with life-threatening injuries.
I could feel I was getting very weak, and I thought, well, if I sit here very long, I'm pretty likely to die. I need to get help right away.
The coastal waters of California are home to one of the world's most infamous and misunderstood predators, the great white shark. While this massive 15-foot, 5,000-pound shark is found near other state coasts, California has the most great white attacks in the entire nation. Eric Larson was hit while surfing on Davenport Beach.
And the beach was deserted. I could feel I was getting very weak, and I thought, well, if I sit here very long, I'm pretty likely to die. I thought I need to get help right away. And it was very hard to walk because my left quadricep muscle had been cut in half. Finally, a young guy comes out of his house and sees me, and he went in, called for help.
Within minutes, Eric is airlifted to safety. After a long recovery process, Eric's experience illustrates why California is a top state for shark attacks.
I had web finger gloves on, and I had split-toe boots. I had a black wetsuit on. If you were trying to put on a costume that would make you look like a seal from underneath, split-toe boots, web finger gloves, shortboard, it's all adding up to bite me, bite here. In retrospect, it was possibly a very stupid thing to do.
A government survey estimated the harbor seal population along California's coast at over 30,000, with colonies stemming from the breeding grounds of the Farallon Islands. Sea lions were estimated at over 230,000, the same human population size as Orlando.
They pick out these seals and sea lions. It's unfortunate that sometimes surfers are in the same place that seals and sea lions are. I think what's important is that you stick to a beach, stay away, and don't swim near the seals. That's going to get you in trouble.
Since 1950, there have been 100 white shark attacks in California. Of those, 13 have been fatal. White sharks are opportunistic hunters, which means they will attack any prey in sight. Jonathan Catherine knows this firsthand.
The day I was attacked was a lot like today. It was quite overcast. I was out at Stinson Beach in the late morning with a friend.
Unlike Eric, Jonathan swims in an ideally safe situation. He waits for waves in 5 feet of water on this crowded beach.
The water around here is generally not that clear, so if something's swimming past you, you really would have no idea. As I was paddling, my right hand hit something only this deep underneath me. I hadn't seen anything in the water. There hadn't been a wave or a ripple or a movement of any kind. At this point, I'm paddling hard.
What Jonathan hit was a great white shark.
It's a sudden movement is what triggers it, and then go out after it. So that's what you want to avoid.
A 12-foot great white shark came up on my right side, and it bit onto my right leg. So when the shark was holding onto my leg, I couldn't get my arms around enough to hold on to. I saw the gills and I grabbed onto those. When I did that, the shark let go. I came up to the surface and I started swimming in. Now with my leg attached, but badly damaged. The lifeguards saw me swimming up to the beach, unable to stand, unable to get up on shore. I lost a lot of blood and then called a helicopter before I was out of the water. And those minutes, maybe just a half hour, made a big difference.
Like Eric, Jonathan's great white let go, realizing Jonathan wasn't food. But why was the shark there, and why did it attack?
I think if you're on a sandy beach, if you're swimming on a sandy beach, it's a pretty safe place to be. So why an attack at Stinson Beach? Well, they moved from a seal colony with all the rocks, and they may move along a beach at some point and may end up seeing somebody at the surface and striking them.
There's a total of 29 inches of wounds, and I said it was between 250 and 400 stitches.
The injury required about 600 stitches before the doctors stopped counting. So it was a long recovery.
Although deadly, the great white shark is an integral part of the marine ecosystem.
The obvious question is when somebody hears about a shark attack is, wouldn't that survivor rather have sharks wiped out, and then they wouldn't have to worry about shark attacks? And because the answer is no so much of the time, I think the science has finally meshed with the people who are advocates for the sharks, and it's made a big change.
I'm a shark fan. I believe that sharks should be out there swimming around. I think they're a very important part of the ecosystem.
I take pride that I've spent my life trying to change people's minds, but I do think people are less afraid of them now.
South Carolina is one of the fastest growing states on America's East Coast. Shark attacks are also on the rise.
So this is a very sharky place for being such a relatively small estuary.
My right foot felt something very painful. I saw how bad it was. The shark's teeth dug in almost to the bone.
A continent away from California's great white populated waters, there's an underwater empire that creates the perfect storm for shark attacks.
It doesn't surprise me that South Carolina is among the top states for unprovoked shark bites. We have a lot of these highly productive estuaries, and in these estuaries, sharks find safety and food.
But what's good for sharks along this rich stretch of eastern coastline can prove dangerous for humans.
When you enter the water here in South Carolina, you're entering a wilderness that belongs more to the sharks than to you.
That makes South Carolina the third most dangerous shark state in the U.S. Shark attacks are on the rise in South Carolina. Unsuspecting beachgoers play in waters only 2 feet deep. What's luring sharks or pushing them so close to the shallows? For Ty Bretts, conditions turned a relaxing day at the beach into any parent's worst nightmare.
The day I was bit by a shark, we were at the Isle of Palms with my daughter Brianna and my daughter Haley. The water was much more murky than normal. There was a rainstorm the night before.
In murky waters like in the waters Ty was in are very confusing to an animal.
The combination of sharks closer to shore and murky beach waters may be the reason a shark was perilously close to Ty and his 2 little girls. Muddy waters cause the shark to blindly rely on other senses to find its next meal.
What an animal does is it hears, it smells, it detects physical vibrations.
The vibrations that attracted this shark may have been caused by the innocent splashing of Ty's young daughters, Brianna and Haley.
They were playing in the waves, and as I looked down in the water, I saw something move around by my youngest daughter, Haley.
The fact that Ty's daughters were splashing in the water may have contributed to the presence of sharks in the area. As I said, sharks have well-developed acoustic senses, so they have mechanical senses. They can feel vibrations, they can hear sounds in the water very well, and they may be attracted to low-frequency kinds of sounds, such as kids in the water would make, or maybe an injured fish might make.
Ty rushes towards his daughters, but this quick movement could have been the very thing that got the shark's attention.
As I walked towards her, that's when my right foot felt something very painful. The shark's teeth dug in almost to the bone, but it left obviously abruptly after it did it, and I saw about a 3 to 4 foot shark in the water leaving, going back out into the waves.
The details of Ty's attack are important for Dr. Abel. He's zeroing in on which sharks are most likely responsible for these shallow attacks in South Carolina.
Ty's situation, when he saw this shadow in the water, he lunged towards his daughters, and then the animal was apparently attracted to him. That That's conceivable, because predominantly the sharks that we think are most responsible are this very robust, beautiful, fast-swimming shark called a blacktip shark.
Blacktip sharks often find food in murky water by biting first and identifying second. The average length of blacktips on the eastern seaboard is around 5 feet long. They feed aggressively on a wide variety of fish and invertebrates and are known to target prey in shallow waters, like the beach Ty was standing in.
First thing I did when I got bit was to bring them to try to get them out of the water. Once we got back up to the boardwalk is when I noticed how much blood there really was.
Ty and his daughters survive, and after months of rehab and skin grafts, Ty is lucky that he didn't lose his leg. Why are blacktip sharks coming increasingly closer to shore? Scientists are still probing for answers.
One hypothesis is that maybe some sharks are getting closer to shore because their food items are being overfished. Another hypothesis might be that there's more sharks patrolling some of the coastlines because the big shark species that would eat the middle-sized shark species have decreased in number. For example, the sharks that might eat blacktip sharks, they may be diminishing in number. People think that maybe blacktip sharks have increased because of that. Well, it would be hard to tell scientifically if overfishing is causing sharks to be closer to shore, and I don't know of any studies that show that. I do know that we have shrimp trawlers near shore around here. Those serve as attractants to the blacktip sharks, the sandbar sharks. So if you're in a small boat following a shrimper, then lots of sharks are there.
Without more research, we may never know why blacktip attacks are increasing and why they are roaming near shore. In the meantime, beachgoers can take comfort knowing that blacktip bites are rarely fatal.
When they bite people, they sense immediately that this is not a prey item that's on its menu. These bites rarely do much damage. Bite and then release.
My thoughts are that the odds are still very low, that you can still be in the ocean and come out fine. Listen, but you're in their environment, whether it's estuaries close by or the warmth of the water or the murkiness of the water. I'm just much more aware of where I'm going and when.
Hawaii. Along these shores is a shark so deadly, it propels these islands into the #2 slot for the most dangerous shark state.
I thought he's finishing me right now, and my leg severed off completely.
If you get bitten by a shark here, you have to wait for an airplane. You may not make it.
A surgeon couldn't have amputated it off any cleaner with a scalpel. It was completely gone.
Hawaii. This tropical paradise lures more and more people to Hawaii's picture postcard beaches and into the domain ruled by over 40 species of sharks. One species clearly dominates the Hawaiian coastline, the tiger shark. With 55 recorded attacks within the last 10 years, Hawaii is the second most dangerous shark state in the U.S. Hawaii's oldest and northernmost island, Kauai, draws the attention of beachgoers and surfers like Mike Coots.
It was early in the morning, and it was the start of our surfing season here in Hawaii. And I remember it smelling really weird, like a foul stench in the water, and we were really excited to get out there, and it could have been the stinkiest day of the year, and it wasn't going to stop us.
Smelling a fishy smell when you're in the water should be an indication to anybody entering the water that there's an increased chance of encountering a shark.
Mike and his friends enter the surf, not knowing that a large tiger shark lurks just below.
We got out there, and all my friends caught a wave right off the bat really fast. And I was out there with a stranger, a guy I hadn't seen before, and as soon as we both started making that initial motion to catch it, the shark came up vertically and just grabbed onto my leg.
It will come up generally from behind and below. The surfer has no understanding that there's a shark there, and all of a sudden the animal breaks the surface and grabs.
I didn't see the fin from far coming. I didn't see any splashes in the water, any signs of distress. It was a blindsided attack. I saw the real square nose, and it was like a table, like completely square, and that's a telltale sign of a tiger shark. It basically came up like a submarine and grabbed onto my legs and started doing this ragdoll, violent shaking back and forth.
The tiger shark has a tooth that looks, it's got a cusp here, up here, and then it comes down here, and it's serrated like that. And then on the other jaw, it's the opposite. And so they move back and forth, and they cut it like butter.
Curious in nature and aggressive when provoked, tiger sharks have been known to stop at nothing to complete a hunt for food.
It was trying to get a better grip on my feet, and I, out of total instinct, punched it in the head. And as soon as I hit it, it let go.
The tip of the snout is a tender place on a shark, at least initially. And so if you can pop a shark at the tip of the snout, the reaction is startled. It might work once or twice, but after a while, it will soon realize that it's bigger and stronger than you.
In contrast to the great white, which dominates the California coast, tiger sharks are highly unlikely to swim away after biting a human, which makes an encounter even more frightening.
I got back on my board, and I started paddling faster and faster, and this weird feeling started coming over me, and it was a shaking in my right leg, and it kind of just went through my body, and this spasming, weird, crazy shake, and I thought, okay, that shark is getting me, and he's finishing me right now. And I looked over my shoulder, and what it was my leg severed off completely. A surgeon couldn't have amputated it off any cleaner with a scalpel. It was completely gone. And that was the moment that I knew that I probably wouldn't make it. And luckily, a little wave came right then, and I caught it all the way up to the sand.
Mike's fast-thinking friends on the beach made a tourniquet and beelined it to the hospital. Mike lost his leg, but he made it.
We can't get into the head of the shark, but if it had wanted more, it would have come back. So for whatever reason, the one bite was sufficient for its needs, whatever its motivation was, whether it was feeding, whether it was aggression.
284 miles away on the big island of Hawaii, James Kerrigan and his wife tell a similar story.
We had gone to the beach for a barbecue.
It was hot and sunny and attractive, and the water was very, very clear and calm.
Decided to get into the water and swim across the little corner of the bay. He actually had me all concerned about stepping on sea urchins. So I was looking out for sea urchins, never thinking that we'd be worried about a shark in the water.
But right beneath them in the same bay, lurking just below the surface, an 8-foot tiger shark is suddenly drawn to James and his wife. With highly developed electroreceptors along the snout, tiger sharks have an astonishing ability to detect even the slightest heartbeat and movements from miles away.
We were just doing side stroke, and my right leg was down in the water, and the shark just came up from behind and grabbed on my right leg. I mean, I remember the initial feeling of being pulled under, and I remember coming back up and swimming into shore, but it was very hectic and very rough at the time.
You could see a lot of the blood in the water, so we realized pretty quickly what had happened.
The scar goes right down to here, which is where you can see how big the shark's mouth was.
You can tell the size of this shark by the tooth imprint. They've all been around 3/4 of an inch, which indicates that they're about 8-foot sharks.
With tiger sharks hunting so close to shore, some theories suggest it could be related to an increase in one of the main food sources in Hawaii.
There's been a big program to protect turtles now, but turtles are also shark food. So because there's been an increase in turtles, we've seen an increase in sharks.
Tiger sharks are atypical. Their behavior toward humans is unpredictable.
Tiger sharks have a catholic diet. They feed on almost anything, ranging from small fish to other sharks.
Their stomach contents reveal things such as whole suits of armor and and you know, halves of horses and all kinds of garbage, as well as the occasional human body. What we do know is that they're a large predator, and they're the big boy on the block.
Which is why Hawaii is the second most dangerous shark state in the U.S. for shark attacks.
People are just swimming around. There's sharks there all the time.
I was near the shark bite capital of the world. A shark was just on the back of my foot, and I couldn't get it off. I was just kicking wildly to free my foot, and it just chomped down harder.
Top of my foot was all like sliced open.
There are more attacks than any other state by hundreds and hundreds.
These are the top 5 most dangerous states in the U.S. for shark attacks. Number 5, North Carolina.
I've spoken to commercial fishermen here that call this area the vortex.
I didn't pull my hand out, I just stood up and I didn't know what the damage would be. And then when I came up, my artery was punctured and the back of my hand right here was slapping off basically.
Number 4, California.
A white shark in California. They move close to the bottom and they see something at the surface moving and they strike it.
It managed to clamp down on both arms.
Number 3, South Carolina.
I saw about a 3 to 4 foot shark in the water, my right foot.
Maybe some sharks are getting closer to shore because their food items are being overfished.
Number 2, Hawaii.
Basically came up like a submarine and grabbed onto my legs. I saw the real square nose, and it was a tiger shark.
It's almost as if the shark is tasting somebody.
The top states in the U.S. for shark attacks each have their own unique conditions that lead to human-shark interactions. But when it comes to crowning a state number 1, it's not even close. The warm waters, populated beaches, and strong tidal flow in this state create the perfect storm. With almost 1,200 miles of coastline, a population doubling almost every 40 years, Florida is hands down the most dangerous state in the U.S. for shark attacks.
There are more attacks in Florida than any other geopolitical entity, by hundreds and hundreds of difference.
In the last decade, people in Florida have been attacked 219 times. That's more than states 2 through 5 combined. The mysterious reasons behind these numbers start with Florida's unique finger-like shape. It's essentially surrounded by sharks.
There's certainly more than 100 species in Florida waters.
Among those species is a blunt-nosed predator so aggressive, some consider it even more dangerous than the great white or the tiger shark. They have a preference for warm, shallow lagoons, bays, and river mouths that connect to the salt water, places where people swim every day in Florida. And like a bear on land, they are highly territorial and aggressive. In the shallow waters of Jacksonville Beach on the Atlantic coast of Florida, a bull shark stealthily approaches Chad Renfro.
I just went out, that day to go surfing, and you can't really see much, once you get about waist deep in the water, so.
Finding prey not just by eyesight, but also through sensory vibrations and pressure changes in the water, the shark targets Chad's movements.
Just kind of came out of nowhere.
The bull shark sinks its jaws deep into Chad's foot.
Initially, you just feel that strong clamp, and I mean, at first it's painful, but you're just, worried about what was going to happen next. As soon as I, got on the shore, I looked down, and, you could see basically the top of my foot was all, sliced open.
Female bull sharks can grow up to 11.5 feet long and reach 500 pounds. Their bite is unequaled at over 1,325 pounds of force.
Basically, 3/4 of a tendon was gone, and then severed a nerve, and then I had 86 stitches, 36 stitches on the inside and 56 on the outside.
His attack illustrates how commonly bull sharks are found close to Florida's shores, in the same space as beachgoers. And in Florida, there is certainly no shortage of people going to the beach.
If you get in a helicopter and you go across Biscayne Beach, these are beaches in Miami, you just see the sharks right between the people. They're always there.
While residents enjoy miles of shoreline, it's the rising influx of tourists that are adding to the shark attack statistics. In a 3-month period in 2013, 26 million tourists visited the Sunshine State.
And darn near every one of them has to at least stick their toe into the ocean as part of their tourism experience. So we simply are putting more people in the water than any other place.
And even though there are millions of people in the water, the concept of safety in numbers doesn't apply here.
There were 4 of us in the water. It was about 12:30. People were starting to come in. It was a really, really nice day.
Like Chad, Colleen was also swimming at Jacksonville Beach in Duval County. Colleen watched an ideal day take a frightening turn for the worse.
We just stood kind of in a line, and I see this movement in the water. I look over and I see these 2 fins emerging out of the water. I scream and start swimming away as fast as I can.
Colleen's frantic swimming is no match for the intense speed of a shark lunging for food.
So this is like a dinner bell.
I see this shark come up out of the water, take my foot, hear this awful crunching sound. I was terrified. Got to shore as fast as I possibly could. It was a little nip, but it could have easily taken my foot off if the shark wanted it to.
Fortunately, Colleen, like Chad, had statistics on her side. 99% of all the people attacked in Florida escape with their lives. Florida's warm waters attract sea life from both the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. They're here to mate and feed on large schools of fish, often coming very close to shore. One stretch of Florida coastline is known as the shark bite capital of the world. Volusia County is where Debbie Salamone chose to go for a morning swim, when suddenly a fish jumped out of the water next to her.
And I thought, uh-oh, that's not a good sign. And as soon as that thought crossed my mind, a shark was just on the back of my foot. And I couldn't get it off. I was just kicking wildly to free my foot, and it just chomped down harder. And at that point, the feeling was all the same. I couldn't tell what was going on. I couldn't see through the breaking waves and the churned up sand. I never could see it.
A black-tip shark had taken hold of Debbie's foot. She needed help, fast.
I was trying to get to shore, and the more shallow the water got, the more difficult it was for me to walk, because now the front of my leg is folding over the top of my foot because my Achilles tendon had been severed. So I was struggling to get in to the water, and I was screaming for help. I remember screaming, "It's got me, it's got me." "50 yards from shore in Florida's Cape Canaveral beach area, Debbie Salamone was attacked by a black-tip shark. A shark was just on the back of my foot, and I couldn't get it off. I was just kicking wildly to free my foot, and it just chomped down harder. I remember screaming, "It's got me, it's got me." My companion just grabbed my arms and he dragged me to the shore. There was blood staining the sand and washing out with the waves, and my whole foot was just mangled and torn apart.
For months after her attack, Debbie was still filled with anger.
You know, at the time, I really didn't know much about sharks when I got attacked, and I was really not very happy with sharks at all. And in fact, I was making plans for revenge.
But that anger soon transformed into something Debbie never anticipated.
I came to see it as more of a challenge of my commitment to environmental conservation. I got my master's degree in environmental sciences and policy, and I went to work for the Pew Charitable Trusts, which has a global shark conservation campaign where we work around the world to save sharks.
And Debbie Salamone is far from alone in her commitment.
Our organization works with a group of shark attack survivors, including myself. I organize all of these people who have been very seriously injured. Some have lost arms and legs. People who had seen the darkest side of sharks and yet still understood the importance of sharks to the ecosystem.
I would say the shark attack has been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I'm an invaluable place to help out if I can, and without them, our oceans are going to be in grave danger, and it's happening fast.
Our group of survivors, we've forgiven. We see a larger mission. We want to see something really good come out of what was very tragic.
Meanwhile, the top 5 states in the U.S. for shark attacks continue to reveal clues about why humans must always be wary when entering these waters. Number 5, North Carolina, where a vortex of ocean currents, water temperatures, and an abundance of food leads schools of spinner sharks into shallow beach areas to feed.
I've seen sharks out there a million times, and if I was going to be afraid of them or hate them, I would have not been out.
Number 4, California, where cold water and colonies of seals and sea lions draw the great white shark into the surf zone to attack from below.
I believe that sharks should be out there swimming around. I think they're a very important part of the ecosystem.
Number 3, South Carolina, where dozens of low-lying estuaries provide the perfect habitat for large schools of black-tip sharks to reproduce and feed in the shallow surf zones.
I'm just much more aware of where I'm going and when.
Number 2, Hawaii, where temperate waters, thousands of tourists, and abundant food sources like sea turtles lure the scavenging and utterly unpredictable tiger shark into popular beach areas.
I didn't have any negative energy towards sharks or why me or why did this happen to me. I felt really fortunate to be alive.
And number 1, Florida, ground zero for sharks and humans colliding. Warm lagoons, beaches, and secluded bays provide the perfect habitat for more than 100 species of sharks, including the highly aggressive bull shark.
You think about it, but at the same time, it's kind of back how it was. You know, you just hope it doesn't happen to you again.
As the population of humans is expected to increase to over 9 billion by the year 2050, North Carolina, California, South Carolina, Hawaii, and Florida will likely remain hotbeds for shark activity.
The ocean is a wilderness. We don't have the expectation that we're going to be safe when we're in the water. But on the list of things that can happen to us negatively in the water, shark bites and shark attacks are very, very, very low.
Humans have shown a deep fascination for these majestic creatures throughout history. Some even speculate our attraction to sharks will continue to grow.
I do think people are less afraid of them now. I believe that the shark-human interaction is on a positive note now. They've become an attraction, the ecotourism attraction. People go there, they want to see the shark.